I'm joined here by a number of leadership committee members who will serve as hosts and or tech support through the evening, and want to thank them for doing so. The leadership committee taps in and out based on our own commitments or allegiances to candidates or to our own seats. And so there's a sort of roving group who maintains the programs of Women in Democracy. And we're really excited to say that over 6 years of providing this event and subsequent events, which you'll learn more about at the end of the program, we have actually seen the numbers in Dedham show more women getting involved. When we started this work, there were a number of elected boards that had no female representation. And as of now, there is a woman on every elected board in town. So we're excited at the number of folks who've stepped up and the number of folks who have stepped behind those folks to support them in their campaigns and in their work. The events of this last week have certainly pointed out that representation matters and that leadership matters. And it's really, really important that we are active in the exercising of this experiment we call democracy, that we ensure that we get involved, that we learn the process, that we learn the candidates in order to make sure that our values or points of view are represented in decision making. And so to the folks at Women in Democracy, this is key to the work that we do, and we're really excited to continue to grow our universe of people who are willing to get involved in this game of local politics. We will be sharing information after this event that you'll hear referenced. Our town clerk will talk about an election calendar. There's a list of appointed and elected positions that Women in Democracy maintains. We will follow up with an email to everyone who is registered with those documents. So if you hear something referenced, you can expect a follow-up email from us. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first presenter tonight. We've got two speakers that will set the stage on serving locally, running and serving locally, before we go into a panel discussion of women currently serving. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our town clerk, Paul Munchback, who will talk a bit about the election calendar and the ins and outs of throwing your name in the ring. Thanks for joining us, Paul.
Thanks, Sarah. I think this is great. This is my 6th year with the Women in Democracy. I know it started off small, but it's now become an important part of democracy throughout the town. So I applaud you and your organization for that. So I'm going to get right into it. I'm here to talk a little bit about how to get involved in local government at the elected position. We have two types of elected officials for the town of Dedham. The first one is running for a town meeting representative. Town meeting is our form of legislative government, and the town moderator, I know, will speak a little bit more about that type of government, but I'll give you a little bit of background. And then the second is running for a major office, and we'll get a little bit into the details with that. So the first thing I want to talk about is our representative town meeting. We have 273 elected town meeting representatives. We have 39 from each district out of the 7 districts that represent the town of Dedham. And we run 39 of those positions are run on 3-year intervals. So every year there is at least 13 town meeting representatives up for election. Those elected town meeting representatives are the backbone to our democracy. They meet twice a year in the spring and the fall, and they decide all our legislative decisions are made there at that night. And just to let you know, it's the oldest form of government that we have, and Dedham is one of the oldest form of governments in, has one of the oldest form of governments in the nation. So people are asking, how do I get involved? It's very simple. Every year I set an election calendar, and that calendar dictates dates and times for candidates to get involved. That is approved by the state Secretary of State's election division, and then we make that available for the residents of Dedham. So by charter, our town elections are held always on the 2nd Saturday of April. Obviously, this past year was a little bit of a challenge with the COVID and the pandemic, but we still made do and had our elections in the end of June, and it was run successfully. So this year we are anticipating, as if all you have to do, it's very simple, is call the town clerk's office. Let us know that you're interested in running and representing or having your name on the ballot in your precinct. We will provide you with a packet that will have information on it with the election dates, the times that papers are due, how many signatures you need, and all the information that you would need to get your name on the ballot. It is very simple. All you need is 10 signatures from your precinct of registered voters. We ask you to get a little bit more just to make sure in case some of the people have moved or they weren't registered voters. You get those papers, you submit them to us, we verify them, your name goes on the ballot. So to do that, you give us a call. Because of the COVID, the town hall is closed. What we will do is set up a time for you to come in. You'll come in, we'll have your papers ready for it. You'll sign your nomination papers. We'll sign an official record book. We'll give you your papers and all the instructions that you need. So that's how you get on the ballot for town meeting. One of the questions everyone says, well, I've never done this before. How do I reach out to my neighbors? How do I reach out? You can sit down. We'll give you as much information and advice that you need with that. And remember, town meeting representatives are exempt from any campaign finance. You can spend whatever money you want. You don't have to record it. It doesn't go to the state. It's every town meeting representative candidate is exempt when they run. The second office is a little bit, basically the same, but a little bit different. It's running for major office. So running for major office, the same protocol to run for major office is the same as for town meeting representative as far as obtaining nomination papers. You call us, set up a time for an appointment. We will meet you. We'll get you all the information. We'll set you up with a packet. The difference is that you just need 50 signatures, and those 50 signatures are town-wide, so they're not from your district. So that's the only difference. For town meeting representative, you need 10 signatures from your district. For townwide office, townwide office, you need 50 signatures townwide. Once again, we ask you to get a little bit more. So as I mentioned before, we have 273 representative town meeting members, 39 from each precinct that meet twice a year. For major offices, those offices go from the select board. We have 5 members of the select board, and they run in intervals. Some run 2 at a time, and some of the terms are 1. Members of the Board of Assessors, town clerk's an elected position, town moderator, school committee, library trustees, Park and Rec Commission, Board of Health, Housing Authority, and Commissioner of Trust Funds. Those are our major offices for the town of Dedham. And I forgot Planning Board. Those are the major all offices that if you're looking to run for those offices are all 50 signatures. Once again, we ask you to get a few more. You pick up your nomination papers. Papers are already available, and their last day to pick them up is February 16th. Last day they do is February 19th, so we give you plenty of time. When you're running for major office, it gets a little bit more complicated because you might want to set up a committee, you might want to raise money, you might want to expend money. Well, what we will do is when you pull your papers to run and obtain them, we give you a packet. The packet will walk you step by step on how to set up a campaign, how to set up a committee, what to do with the campaign finance, the election calendar, and anything you need to know about being a candidate for election for a major office. If after you read that packet, you still have some concerns and you're not sure on what to do, you can set up an appointment with myself. We'll meet. We can meet one-on-one at the town hall, and I will walk you through the process to make sure that you feel comfortable that if you want your name on the ballot and you feel that you want to be a candidate and you feel that you can best represent this town, I will help you the best to get that start and make sure that it happens. Now, one of the things about signatures that are a little bit different during these COVID times, during the presidential and some of the statewide offices, you were able to get electronic signatures to run. That is no longer allowed. That was special legislation that ran out at the end of the year at December 31st. For local elections, you still need to get in-person signatures in ink. We gave you an extra week or two to get those signatures, just to knowing that it might be a little bit more difficult in COVID times to get those. But the signatures still have to be in person, or it has to be an original signature. You can copy your nomination papers and hand them out, and people can sign one paper at a time if you want to do that. That is allowable. There's not a reduction in signatures. There's still 50 for major office, and for town meeting representative, there's 10. So not to take up too much of your time, and like I said, I know this is an important part of the local government. We have 2 major offices, I think, 2 offices to run for elected offices in the town. Town meeting representatives, you need 10 signatures from your precinct. Call us, make an appointment, and we'll walk you through the process. And then if you're looking to run for a major office, the offices that I explained earlier are all on the ballot this year. Call us, we'll give you a packet, we'll walk you through it. If after you read the package that we give to you, you still have some questions or concerns, let me know, and I will walk you through the process and help you get started so that you have that ability to have your voice being heard. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time.
No, thank you, Paul. That's great. And if we have some time later during questions,
Sure.
hopefully you'll stick around. So
I will.
If folks
I'll
have
be here.
specific follow-up. Awesome. So next on the docket, another very important member of this whole process we call running for office is our town moderator, Mr. Dan Driscoll. Dan's going to share a little bit about town meeting and how what town meeting does and how town meeting members serve our community. Dan.
Thank you, Sarah. So I want to talk just a little bit about our form of government. Cities have mayors and city councils. Towns have select boards and school committees, a town manager generally, and town meeting. Town meeting is the town's equivalent to a city council, or if you want to think on the statewide level, there's a governor, that's the executive branch, and there's a state legislature, that's the legislative branch. So in Massachusetts towns, town meetings are the legislative branch. And as town clerk Paul Munchback mentioned, it is one of the oldest forms of government in the United States. 273 members. The town is divided into 7 precincts. Just click on this thing here. Would you like to unmute your microphone? I think I already did.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Why are you putting those little boxes in front of me, Sarah? 273, the town's divided into 7 districts, so there are 39 from each district. Of those 39, every year 13 are up for re-election. So town meeting offers an opportunity that cities don't. So if you want to get really involved in the city form of government, you have to have the courage and the money and the time to run for city council. In the New England town, if you have a healthy dose of interest and a little bit of time, you can be an active member in making lots of decisions for the town. So what are the decisions the town meeting makes? Is it just a kind of window dressing thing that gets together and chit chats? No, it's really not. I mean, it does do that. It does get together and there's a lot of socialization, but it plays a very, very important role. So most of the decisions that get made, which determine many of the important aspects of the town, they all make their way through town meeting. So the 2 big categories are the town budget and zoning. But those are kind of dry terms. So what does that really mean to be voting on the budget and zoning? The fact that Dedham has a Human Rights Commission, that was a decision of the town meeting. The fact that Dedham has a senior center and where it is stationed is a decision of town meeting. The fact that we're building a combined police and fire department building instead of separate buildings, that was a decision made by town meeting. The Early Childhood Education Center, the Avery School. In fact, every building, every town or school building that you see in the town of Dedham, that decision was made by town meeting. The fact that we have the Muchacho Pool, that's an old decision, but that was made by town meeting. And it was not a slam dunk. There was a little bit of controversy back then to do it, but we did it. Gonzalez Field, even the type of turf used on Gonzalez Field, the artificial turf, decision of town meeting. The decision not to build the Manor Fields, at least for now, that was also made by the town meeting. You'll notice in Dedham Square that there are lots of residences now that weren't there 10 years ago. Generally on the second floor and above, and on the first floor, there are retail uses. That decision was made by town meeting. All the great restaurants in Dedham, they're there because town meeting allowed more liquor licenses in town. So those are very concrete examples of what town meeting does. So participation and getting your hand on the levers, that's one aspect. The second is, I'm going to use the word transparency. That's kind of an overused term these days, but it is very hard to slip anything by in the town of Dedham because there are committees that are made up of both town officials and residents that have their thumb in the pie on almost every aspect of life, including, which I just learned myself last week, the decision on how to handle streets with difficult traffic problems. Which ones are we going to put some investments in? Which ones we are not? There's a board that recommends, the select board has the final decision, but that goes through a citizen group that is also joined with some town officials and some professionals. So that, I worked in a city earlier in my career, and I can tell you that that's a major difference in a town versus a city. And it's particularly a way of doing business in the town of Dedham. There are lots of committees in the town of Dedham, and they all have their little area of jurisdiction, and they have a lot of influence on how decisions are made. I'll give you an example on the budget. The school department, the way the town budget works is the school department prepares its budget, and the town manager prepares the budget for the town hall side of town hall, so everything except the school. But then they do have to get together, and truthfully, the town manager has kind of the final say on what will go to town meeting, but it's usually negotiated out. A group of parents in Dedham, this is about 2, maybe 3 years ago, who were town meeting representatives, were not satisfied with the amount of money that was being asked for the school department. So they successfully got town meeting to add $200,000 to the budget, above the amount that the school committee and the town managers and the select board had agreed to. So that would not happen, I can tell you, in a city. That was true, you know, whether you're in favor of that or not, that was truly democracy in action. Now, the question I think gets raised as well, that's an awful lot of material for a town meeting representative to have to absorb and handle and figure out. And it is. It's a tremendous amount of material. Luckily, there is one group which does most of the heavy lifting and sorting things out, and that's the Finance and Warrant Committee. The Finance and Warrant Committee in Dedham, as in 2/3 of the towns in Massachusetts, is appointed by the moderator. So the Finance and Warrant Committee isn't really tied to any particular elected part of the town. So they're not appointed by the selectmen, they're not appointed by the school committee. They're appointed by the moderator, which is an elected position, but I'm not involved in any of the executive functions of the town. My sole function is to preside over town meeting. And this committee spends countless hours in the 2 or 3 months leading up to each of the 2 town meetings we have. So, you know, town meeting members tend to think of town meeting as, you know, maybe a month before hearings, you know, reading about articles and things. Meanwhile, the Finance and Warrant Committee, all town residents, by the way, have been having public hearings. They meet with every department head. They meet with the school department, school committee, school superintendent. They meet with Parks and Recreation. And each of these groups makes their pitch about what their request is for both articles and the budget. Well, does that give this one group too much power? The Finance and Warrant Committee makes no decisions. What they do is they make recommendations to you, and it's up to you to either accept them or not accept them. So for example, in the case of that $200,000 for the school department, that was not a Finance and Warrant Committee recommendation. Some of the big decisions you've seen in years past on Manor Trail, Rail Trail, Manor Fields, in many cases, town meeting voted differently than the recommendation of the Finance and Warrant Committee. So they're an independent group that frankly doesn't have any skin in the game. They don't have a campaign to run. They don't have an elected board they have to answer back to. So they work very, very hard, and they pride themselves on giving what they feel is the best answer, let the chips fall where they may, and the chips fall where they may when town meeting makes the final decision. So it's a nice balance of having there's an elected school committee, elected park and rec, elected planning board, elected select board, and you are all elected town meeting representatives. And then there's this one group of your friends and neighbors who are not elected and whose job is to do the technical work and make a recommendation. Kind of like you would hire an accountant to help you with your taxes or hire a lawyer to help you with a legal problem. So that's the Finance and Warrant Committee. There are various ways to be a town meeting representative. This question gets asked, well, gee, this sounds like a lot of time. I will tell you that there are people who are very interested in this and who devote a lot of time to it. They go to some of the hearings. They might grab the school superintendent or the town manager and say, I have some questions. Can you give me, can you give me 15 minutes on the phone? And that's certainly to be encouraged, but that is not the floor. You don't have to do all that in order to be an effective and conscientious town meeting representative. You'll receive all the information many weeks before town meeting. If you make an effort to look at that, maybe to ask some of your neighbors and colleagues what they think of the different articles, then there is what's called the warrant review meeting. It used to be called the mini town meeting. That's kind of a dry run. No votes taken. It's just people get up and talk and say why they are in favor or opposed to something. That's another way to gain some information. All of the hearings that Finance and Warrant Committee do are open to the public, of course. So if there was a particular issue you were interested in, you could go to that hearing. You wouldn't have to go to all the hearings. So there are ways to be an effective town meeting representative without, taking on another job, because, it could go that high if you chose to, believe me. But, most people with families and jobs, family responsibilities can't really do that. So it is a very good way to be involved in making town decisions. The fact that there are 273 means that if you're new and you're not quite sure, you can kind of sit and take it all in and then cast your vote. You don't have to be up there grabbing the microphone to speak or arguing with other town officials. You can sit and observe and then make your best decision. So I encourage, I'm looking at the list of people here. There's already a lot of people that are active here, but there's always some new names. We encourage anybody that's interested in town meeting. I'm going to type my contact information in the chat box. Feel free to call me or text me or email me. I'll be glad to talk with you about it. And by the way, what Paul Munchback, our town clerk, said about his role is absolutely true. He will meet with anybody, whether you're new to town or whether you've been in town for 50 years, and walk you through the process. He's very encouraging of people getting involved in town government. So thank you. Thank you, Sarah, Jessica, and Liz for inviting me back to speak to the group again this evening.
Thank you very much, Dan. And I do just want to take a minute to thank and really congratulate both Dan and Paul Munchback on their work this last year. An incredibly challenging time to run free and fair elections, an incredibly challenging time to allow town meeting to do its critical business. But both of you have really stepped up to make sure that Dedham hasn't missed a beat and that residents are able to make the decisions and voice the opinions that they want, even in these crazy times. So thank you both. And we will, if folks have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll be asking some after we get through the panel.
Sorry, there was one question for Dan.
Oh yeah.
From Justin Humphreys. So, and the question was, are there committees within the town meeting members?
Many town meeting members are on committees. The town meeting is not, it's not set up like the legislature, which has a Ways and Means Committee and a Transportation Committee and an Education Committee. So they're not within town meeting. But there's a bylaw review committee, there's a capital expenditure committee, and there's an open space committee, and they're not they're not just made up exclusively of town meeting members. If I answered your question, otherwise, Justin, just get a hold of me. I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
He says yes, thank you.
Thanks. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Molly Uppenkamp, who has agreed for the second year in a row to moderate our panel. So Molly, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. While our technology people are getting our other panelists spotlighted so you can see all of our videos, I'll take a moment to just introduce myself. So like Sarah said, my name is Molly Uppenkamp. I've been involved on the leadership team for Women in Democracy Dedham for about 2.5 years now. My very first introduction to town government and town politics when I moved to Dedham was attending one of the WINDD Local Government 101 events. So this is always one of my favorite nights of the year. I am an elected town meeting member in Precinct 3, which is East Dedham. So special shout out to my East Dedham neighbors. And I am really excited to get a chance to help us learn from the collective wisdom of these wonderful women who have agreed to participate with us tonight. So while we're finding our other ones, let's see. We just realized in the immediately before this meeting that you could spotlight multiple videos at the same time. It was a very exciting Zoom moment for all of us. So perfect. And then I think we just need Heather. And then I'll just do kind of a quick little introduction. Just maybe a name for each panelist. And if you want to just, after I introduce you by name, if you want to just share how you're involved in town. Then I have a few questions and we'll get started. We'll go ahead and start with our first extra spotlight here. Margaret Adams, if you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are. Oh, I will unmute you. Hold on. Does that work? Oh. Hold on.
Nope.
There we go. Perfect.
Hi,
Go ahead,
everybody. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm Margaret Adams. I lived in Dedham for about 22 years, over off Dedham Square, and I've been, I think I'm in my 5th year on town meeting, and I've also served 2 years on the Dedham Human Rights Commission and 2 terms on the Cultural Arts Council as well.
Great. Thanks, Margaret. All right, next let's introduce Heather Springer.
Hi, everyone. I am Heather Springer. I have lived in Dedham for since 1997. So what's that, 24 years. I had been on town meeting for 2 terms, but then last year decided to run for Commissioner of Trust Funds. And as a result of that, had to give up my town meeting seat, which I'm still a little sad about. But so been involved in an elected position for the past, I guess, 6 or 7 years.
Great, thanks. And finally, Kim Bevins.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Bevins, and I serve on town meeting from Precinct 3, and I was just elected last year, and my family and I have been living in town for about 5.5 years.
Great, wonderful. Thank you all for agreeing to share your experiences and your wisdom with everybody here tonight. I think we'll go ahead and just dive right in, and I'll try to kind of call on you to answer, which I know we wouldn't necessarily do if we're in person, but with the virtual format, that'll make it go a little bit smoother. So first question for you tonight, what originally led you to get involved in public service and how did you get started? And let's go ahead and start with Kim.
So like I said, we've lived in town for about 5.5 years. I have 2 children, so I'm very invested. We're here for the long haul, so I'm very invested in what happens in town and how it progresses. I had been involved in, I'm still involved in the Dedham Education Foundation. And some friends had sort of brought it up, like, oh, would you and your husband, do you want to run from town meeting and get involved that way? And then an issue came up in town that we cared about very much. So I attended some events around that. It came before town meeting. I attended the mini town meeting on that, and then just as a witness, as a citizen, and then watched that town meeting. And that was the moment where I realized a couple things. One, that I didn't feel young families with young children were represented very widely. And I got the sense that, okay, well, maybe I can do this, because I hadn't done anything like it before. So that was sort of the launching point. There was something that I cared about, and I wanted, you know, all the families that I knew to be represented in that form of government.
Great, thanks, Kim. Margaret, how about you? How did you first get involved, and how did you start? Well, let's go to Heather while we figure out unmuting Margaret.
Oh, do you want to go, Margaret?
Oh, thanks, Heather. I think it was important to me to, as my children got older, and we certainly demand more of our children and want them to be role models and trying to be civically engaged. To me, it was important to sort of model that. And if I want my children to be engaged and get involved and be activists, I often tell them that their job in the world is to make the world a better place, and whatever they decide to do is to make it better for either other people or the environment in some way, to have a legacy, to have an impact, no matter how small or how big. So I felt it was important to model that, and to model it in my own community. It was something certainly that was modeled when I was young. I had a dad who was quite an activist and a long history, which is fun to share at another time. And so that was important to me. And I think, as it was also shared, I think it was important to increase and to show my family that we could be represented. I think representation matters. And as a young family, still relatively young to Dedham, 20 years, still is probably not considered a townie yet or ever, but to be represented. And as a Latina immigrant to this country, I thought it was also important to bring a different voice. And as a longtime educator, also, I thought it was important to bring that voice and to be able to contribute in some way. And to share expertise and knowledge with my community. And I'll pass it on to Heather.
Go ahead, Heather.
Thanks. Yeah, similarly, I grew up having great role models. My parents, my father served on the school committee for a few terms, and both of my parents were very kind of politically active, I would say. And I was a political science major. I've always loved government and politics, and I was an intern for, at the time, he was Senator Bill Cohen up in Maine, and then also a first-term congressman in Washington, D.C. when I was in college. And then when I graduated, I actually worked for a town manager up in Maine, and I used to take minutes at the selectmen's select board meetings. So always very interested in it, but you know, one thing leads to another. Next thing you know, I'm married with a couple of kids, IT project manager, not doing anything like I thought I would be doing. But luckily, my husband and I got involved through our kids, you know, in some local charities and school stuff. And we met Sarah. And I think I was at one of the first WINDD public events, you know, about running for office. So that kind of piqued my interest. And then right around the same time, believe it or not, they didn't have enough candidates for town meeting in precinct, I think we were precinct 5 at the time. So we got a call probably from like Paul or Dan, you know, on a voicemail was left saying, can you consider running for town meeting? We need more people for your precinct. So my husband ran, he got elected, and came home and was like, you got to do this. This is fun. You can make a difference, whatever. So that kind of inspired me to run for town meeting. And then last year, well, I guess a little bit over a year ago, Emily Reynolds, who we had, my husband and I had met through, I don't even know how, but anyway, she asked if I would consider running for Commissioner of Trust Funds because she's on that board. And I thought, well, you know what, that seems like a good next step, moving out of town meeting into, you know, another town position. So I've been doing that for about a year, and yeah, that's kind of how I got involved.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Common theme I'm already sensing is that a lot of times people just need to be asked to run for something. So, you know, if there's someone in your neighborhood, in your life that you think should run, ask them to run. And sometimes that's all it takes. I know I was also asked, like, hey, have you thought about this? You should do it. And I was like, oh, okay. So that can really make a big difference for people in wanting to take that leap. Speaking of thing I was going to mention before we got started, so I'm going to interject it here right now. Many of you here tonight have already decided to run for town meeting and townwide office. And we are going to have time right after the panel to be able to have candidates introduce candidates so people can see who's running for what. And so if you haven't already put in the chat to the host your name and what you're running for, go ahead and make sure you do that during the panel so we can make sure we get everybody who is running for something who is here tonight, make sure they get an introduction. Also, just note to the panelists, you may have noticed we made you co-host, so you can now mute and unmute yourself while we're doing this. So hopefully that'll fix our sound issues. All right, so speaking of kind of, you know, being asked to run, taking that leap, pulling papers, deciding you're gonna go for it. What was your biggest fear about running, or Margaret, in your case, also applying for your position? And did your fear come true? Let's start with Heather this time.
So I guess my biggest fear around running for town meeting was that it was going to be boring. And that, you know, it wouldn't be as interesting as Peter was making it out to be. And that did not come true at all. I believe I'm not the type of person, and some of you can attest to this, who, you know, loves to like go out every night and whatever. I'm more of a homebody. So the thought of sitting in like a 3 or 4 hour long meeting at night was not something that sounded appealing to me. But let me tell you, I look forward to those times. Like I said, I miss it now that I can't do it anymore. And those meetings were interesting. They were fun. Yeah, you realize that one vote, like literally one vote, can swing things one way or another. Like you can make a big impact on your town. And you know, it's 2 nights a year. I mean, it's really not, it's, I guess technically 4 nights a year if you count the mini town meeting, but it's not a huge commitment. So that was my biggest fear on town meeting. I guess my biggest fear around Commissioner of Trust Funds was probably that it was going to be a contested race and that I'd have to campaign. Because again, I am not, you know, the most like extroverted person. And I don't really like holding signs when it's, you know, 40 degrees out and raining. So that also did not materialize. I was uncontested last year. So yeah, those are my fears and they did not come true.
Okay, Kim, how about you?
So I attended this event last year and I had my papers and I showed up, and it was in person, which was really nice, but I showed up with my paperwork and I got to meet other people in Precinct 3 running, which was really, really great. So so my fear was that I didn't know what I was doing, like at all. So I'm a mental health counselor. This is not stuff I do. This is not stuff I'm familiar with. I did have, actually with my parents, I had a lot of role models growing up, but I never got involved. And so I just didn't know. So it was really great to get together with another group. It was a really wonderful group. We could play off each other's strengths and support each other. But what I didn't also know was that we were going to have some pushback within our precinct. And so sort of the fears of the unknown sort of came true. I mean, we worked through it and that was okay. But we did have people, we had made a postcard, and then we had people in our precinct who were kind of upset about that, had made some complaints, were just kind of getting on top of people on social media. There was a lot of kind of crankiness that we had to kind of deal with. But again, we had a group and we got to work together and push through it. So, you know, having people, and this is a great event, and obviously it's different this year, but there's a lot of people out there who are willing to help. And so, you know, whatever you don't know, there's somebody else who knows, and they're very willing to share.
Thank you. Margaret, what was your biggest fear and did it come true?
Heather had, a lot of things Heather said resonated with me. I think as women, we're not as good at selling ourselves. Sort of the conditioning that we've had sort of minimizes sort of our voice at times, sort of the structures that we belong to in our own workforce, sometimes our own families. And this requires a little bit of selling yourself and being bold and brave. And it also requires some vulnerability, because when you do that, you kind of put out both your scars and the good stuff, your strengths, and sometimes you put also your areas of need and weaknesses out on display. And so it requires a sense of vulnerability. I think that gets better the wiser and older you get. You get better at it and you get less concerned about some of those things. But it requires some strength from within. I think something that helps propel that is sort of having friends and colleagues and mentors. And we need to do that for each other as women, because, and I also appreciate, and Dan Driscoll and Paul Munchback, the men who have also taken on roles to mentor women and support them, because they play a major role. And I think it takes some vulnerability. I have stood in front of full school staffs of 400 people and never been nervous at all, but standing at town meeting in front of everyone, stood with Jess Porter to argue for the Human Rights Commission. It took my breath away. I could feel my heart beating. And that does not happen when I'm at work and I'm confident. So it takes some vulnerability and strength from within and conviction, and belief that this is right and what you're doing is right, and strength. And building community can help us be stronger to do that kind of work.
Excellent, thank you. Those were all wonderful answers. I'm just going to jump in and share something from my personal experience here, because I think my biggest fear is probably one that every person who has ever in the history of time put their name on a ballot fears, and that's that you lose. And that happened to me. The first time I ran, I was, didn't really know a ton of people, but I was really excited to get involved. I put my name on the ballot and I lost. I was 14th place for the 13th town meeting spots. So I almost made it, and I was really bummed. But then the next year I was like, okay, I'm going to try again. And to echo what other people have said, I went to go pick up my papers at town hall, and Paul Munchback kind of gave me a couple of tips on how I might be more successful on that second round. And one of the tips he gave me was to run for one of the open one-year seats in my precinct, because it was going to be a little bit less competitive, still more candidates than there were seats, but I was able to get one of those one-year seats and kind of get my foot in the door, and then was later elected to a full term at town meeting. So, it's like Margaret said, it takes some vulnerability to kind of put yourself out there, but the worst that happens is you lose. Oh, well, I lived, you'll live too. And then you can always just try again, right? So it's something that can, it's a unique experience, but it is kind of exciting, like seeing how it will turn out. So anyway, sorry to insert myself into our lovely panel here, but I think that's a common fear that it's.
You had a great postcard too, Molly.
Oh, well, thanks.
It helped me.
All right, so let's see. We've heard a lot about kind of the responsibilities of some of these towns and boards, but what would surprise people about serving on your board or being a member of town meeting? What's something that would surprise people about that experience? And why is that something that was kind of fun for you to discover? So I think we'll start with Heather this time.
Okay. I think something that might surprise people about town meeting is, I think the fact that depending on the issue, you might, align with people in other people in town meeting, other town meeting members that you would not necessarily suspect that you would be in alignment with. There are a lot of different issues that come before town meeting, and I certainly I have voted the opposite way of my husband on some things. I've definitely voted the opposite way of people who I would consider very good friends of mine. But the nice part about it is that you're still friends at the end of the day. You might go into town meeting and kind of be opposed, but you come out of town meeting and you're still neighbors, and you recognize that despite the fact that you might have different opinions on what the best approach to address a problem is, you both have the same intent to do what's best for the town of Dedham. So I think it's unfortunate that the political environment, particularly, as of late, has, I don't know, it's gotten very, divisive, I suppose. But town meeting, especially a few years ago, it restored my hope in humanity to a large degree, because you realize that, like I said, we are kind of all in it together. We might have different ideas about how to get to the end goal, but usually we are all working towards the same end goal. So it was kind of a unifying experience for me. And then the Commissioner of Trust Funds, I've only been to 3 or 4 meetings. I would say the thing that has surprised me most about that is how detailed it is. We had a lot of information. There's a lot of information to absorb in that role, and a lot of just kind of coordination. And Emily's the chairwoman this year, and she does a great job. It's just a lot of, like I said, kind of data and numbers, and keeping track of what the commission has done in the past, and then applying that to how we're going to make decisions in the future. So yeah, it's more involved, I suppose, than I thought it was going to be.
Great, thank you. Margaret, how about you? What's something that would surprise people about serving on the Human Rights Commission or town meeting, or Cultural Council? That was the other one you mentioned.
What Heather said resonated also about the detail-oriented work that gets involved in some of the, open meeting laws and posting. There's this piece around making sure you're doing the right thing, and understanding budgets, and sort of understanding some of the procedures and policies, parliamentary rules, and trying to make sense of all that. I think what most surprised me is we were often think of getting involved in politics per se as more about power and control. And that's never resonated, and I don't think it resonates with most women either. What I've been really impressed by is the sense of community and connection, even from town meeting, that arises over time. Sometimes it's not immediate. Sometimes it takes a couple of town meetings, but and a couple of committee meetings, and you sort of feel like you're connected, and you understand and have a common sense of purpose. And I think that often strives us and moves us forward, and it fulfills something different for me personally, that's different from the professional life and family, and gives you a sense of purpose and connection to the community, and something that I also just want to model for my own children as well.
Great. And I know, Kim, your town meeting experience has been a little bit colored by COVID so far, but what's something that would surprise people about serving on town meeting, or even being a new town meeting member?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we haven't had an atypical start, those of us who started last year. So none of that was normal at all. So yeah, that was a surprise unrelated to town meeting itself. But I guess similarly to what Margaret and Heather have said, like you don't have to be an island in this process, right? I guess I'm always trying to how many more voices, right? Or want to have a conversation, right? Or invite you in and tell you what's going on, or, everyone has opinions, but also people want to educate, if they know something. I guess I've been surprised at like how many voices, right? And how many people I've been able to be connected to who have a lot of knowledge. And just a deep knowledge again, like we've been here 5.5 years. Again, this is new stuff for me. There's a lot of new terms. There's a lot of new lingo, right? We get the booklet from the Finance and Warrant Committee, and half of them, I don't know what this means. I have no idea. So it's really great to have multiple people to be able to go to and ask questions and whatnot. And like Margaret mentioned, the community aspect, and I think Heather too, right? Just it feels like it just grows from there, and more so even than I thought it would. So that's been really great.
Great, thank you all of you. I'll echo that community sentiment. I think the thing that I found most surprising was how many friends I made by just going to these like handful of meetings a couple of times a year. I was like, oh, cool, new people. And so that was something I wasn't necessarily expecting, but has been really great as well. So definitely echo that community sentiment. And I guess kind of that leads us naturally into what we're going to have as our last kind of formal question for the panel. And I have a couple of ones that have come in from participants as we've been chatting too, so I'll get to those in a second. But what has been the most rewarding aspect about serving in your current role? And maybe, in addition to, because I feel like you've all kind of mentioned some really good key pieces of things that you found really rewarding, but what's something about your role specifically that you think has really something that makes you proud and something that has been rewarding for you personally? Let's see, Margaret, we'll start with you this time.
I think it's the most fun is to actually write an article for town meeting and then try to figure out how to get it passed. It is about the most democratic process. This faraway process that happens in Washington, D.C. or even in Boston at the State House seems so far away. Like we just spent 4 years where we felt like we couldn't impact anything that happened at the national level, but you can impact the local community, and it can be impactful and have a long-lasting legacy. And Jess and I stood in front of what I was convinced would not agree, what I was convinced would never pass, the Dedham Human Rights Commission, but did. And I really did not think it was going to happen, but it did, and it was very fulfilling. And it really, even if it had lost, we were committed to continuing to try the following warrant, and also standing up also and saying that we needed to change the name of our select board to as well. I think those are things that have impact over long term. And I think that's very powerful to impact democracy at the local level and really feel that you have some long-lasting impact.
Great, thank you. Kim, how about you? What's been most rewarding about serving a town meeting so far?
I really like the avenue to meet my neighbors in a different capacity. So having young kids, right, that's sort of the world that I'm steeped in, right? So on one hand, I wanted to be able to bring that and represent it. But then at the same time, it's even like quite literally my neighbors, right, who live around me, whether I got to see them at the primaries and we were standing outside last year, or just knocking on doors, or just saying to the ones I know, oh, hi, do you know this person on the other side of you? Really just to expand that network. And again, back in this kind of community feel. And that just feels really good to me. It's like, we're in New England and people are, maybe a little more reserved sometimes. So it's a nice introduction, right? Like you have a purpose, right? You have a reason, like, oh, I represent you, I'm your neighbor. So that part I really love. And that's another way. So even if these other neighbors aren't serving in some capacity, right, just to get to know them in that way, know who they are. and to tell them who I am and my family are. That's been really great for me. That's the part that I love the best.
Great, thank you. Heather, how about you?
So as far as my role on the Commissioner of Trust Funds, I would say the most rewarding part of that is that we get to give away money. So that's always fun, that's always a good news story, right? But particularly this year with COVID and the impact that COVID has had on some of the great local nonprofit organizations who have trust funds via the town, being able to help them out, hopefully a little bit through this very challenging year, certainly for most charities and nonprofits. But yeah, I mean, as far as town meeting goes, that was rewarding. I mean, there were a lot of rewarding parts of town meeting for me, but in particular, it just feels so like really democratic. And like Margaret was saying, and I remember reading as a poli-sci major, Tip O'Neill's famous quote about all politics is local, and you really get it when you're serving on town meeting. And also, I think Dan Driscoll told me, maybe I might not have been Dan, someone told me that town meeting is a pretty uniquely like New England thing, which for some reason makes me love it even more because I'm a native New Englander. And I just think, I just feel like it's bringing, we're like holding fast to the roots of America here and democracy. And then the only other thing I will say that is rewarding that we don't talk about much, maybe in this meeting, probably because there's another meeting about this, but is serving on somebody's campaign, like holding signs, making phone calls to your friends and neighbors on their behalf. Again, something I never thought I would take joy in, and I do. Like, it's fun. It's fun to get involved in somebody's campaign, watch the election results come in on election night. So even if you don't want to run for anything, maybe consider just getting involved with somebody else's campaign just to lend a hand. You'd be surprised how much you might like it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, ladies. I have a couple of questions that I think we can kind of collectively answer. One, just to kind of piggyback off of what Heather was just saying about campaigns, a question came in about wanting to kind of see examples of postcards or other campaigning materials that people have used. And at the end in our closing, we'll have a little bit more information about another event WINDD will be hosting in February, specifically about campaigning. So if you're interested in some of that more kind of ins and outs of that and specific info on what a campaign looks like and what kind of materials can be useful, highly encourage you that you attend that event, and more info coming in a minute. Somebody from the group asked about the time commitment for town meeting. So I would say, kind of to Dan's point, it can vary a lot based on how invested you are. At a bare minimum, it's 2 meetings a year, right? The two town meetings. And then there are the kind of additional warrant review meetings just before those, where that I have found to be incredibly helpful, because that's kind of your space to ask questions and learn a little bit more about what's on the warrant before you get to the meeting and it's time to vote. So I would say those are the 4 meetings that are kind of must-see TV. But I don't know if any of you other ladies who have served on town meeting, do you find yourself spending a much extra time outside of those 4 meetings, kind of following things and getting prepared, or what has been your experience? Anyone can just jump in, and not everybody has to answer this one.
I mean, usually there's a little bit of time to just like read the book, the warrant, and figure out what's in there, get your thoughts together about what questions you might want to ask if you're going to the mini town meeting, or, and obviously you can ask them at the regular town meeting too. But yeah, not much more than that, I wouldn't say, for me.
Yeah, great.
Same. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. All right, and then one last question that I've already gotten. I'm just checking. I'm getting questions texted to me also as this is all happening. So I'm sorry if I keep looking down at my phone. Someone asked just in thinking about presenting yourself as somebody who's seeking an office, you know, that there's a kind of common theme that most people will, as part of their introduction, say how long they've lived in town. And in your experience as a candidate or as a voter or someone just involved in town, do you find that to be important information for people to share, or is it something that just is kind of habit for candidates at this point in Dedham? So if anybody has any thoughts on that as part of a kind of a candidate introduction, sharing how long you've lived in town.
It's always a hot topic, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, if you're trying to connect with someone, again, being here, you know, 5.5 years, it does sort of give you this starting place sometimes, right? Like, oh, how long have you lived here? And for young families, like sometimes that's, well, even if your kids are older, I guess, like, you know, when your kids were born, you know, and all of that. It's not, to me, it's not important in terms of what you stand for. You know, if somebody's running, right, I'm more interested in what you'd like to accomplish. You know, personally, I just take that as more of a get to know you kind of question, but that may or may not overlap with, you know, why you actually want to serve.
I think it's sort of kind of like claiming back because it's a controversial piece in the town, we have to say that there's sort of this line between the townies and then everyone else. But by saying, hey, I've lived here 3 years and I've committed to 3 years, I think that is just as valid as saying I've lived here 20 years. By saying it and putting it out there, I think you sort of validate, I am a citizen, I'm a resident of this town. I may pay taxes, I may own my home, and I have a valid right to be part of the democracy of the town. So I think in my mind, it's not to say that I'm better than someone who's only been here or someone who's lived their whole life here. It's to say, I live here, and I'm a resident of this town and deserve the same rights to the democratic process, and to be involved and engaged. So I kind of flip it the other way to say as a badge of honor, to say whether it's 3 years or 20 or a lifetime, it's your story, and your badge of honor.
Thank you. I love that perspective. I think, you know, for me, when I was first getting involved, I was relatively new to town, and I initially felt kind of intimidated by people who were like, I've lived here my whole life. And I was like, oh, I haven't. But I also found, like, in getting to know people, you know, there's a lot of people who haven't lived here their whole lives, and everybody's kind of looking for somebody to connect with and share an experience with and to represent their perspective. So, you know, having newer voices and older voices and, you know, listening to each other and having that conversation, I think, is an important part of making it all work, you know, being part of the democracy of the town, as Margaret said. So I think that's definitely something, you know, if you're new and you're, you know, you hear people say that and you feel intimidated, like, don't, you know, everybody's voice is valid and everybody's looking for someone to connect with and represent their experience. So new and old, everybody's welcome. All right, one more kind of just in question from the audience here. I haven't read through this whole thing yet, so I'm going to read through it before I say it out loud. Okay, so someone says that, you know, hello, can't run myself, but I'd like to help out with other people's campaigns. So kind of speaking to what Heather was sharing about getting involved, but often don't know who's running until the postcards arrive in the mail, at which point a lot of the work is probably done. So how would you suggest somebody who maybe isn't running but wants to be involved, how could they go about making themselves useful? You know, finding candidates, offering their time, getting connected, especially maybe, you know, if you've done more active campaigning for town meeting, or Heather ran for townwide office and has been involved in other campaigns, how do you suggest someone gets involved in that aspect of the political life?
Stick around to the end of this meeting, right? And then they'll
Yeah.
meet some people who are running.
Yep. I mean, and I think nowadays lots of people have Facebook campaign pages, you know, where you could, if you see, well, first of all, the list of people who have at least pulled papers to run at this point is on the town website. So you can get an idea, you can get some names of who's at least considering it. And then, like I said, typically on Facebook, at least for the major offices, you'll find that people have a, you know, Heather Springer for Commissioner of Trust Funds page or whatever. I didn't have that because I didn't have an opponent, but I would have maybe if I did. So, you know, you can connect that way. And then, yeah, like attend events like these. And inevitably, because people always are looking for volunteers, somebody
So
would reach out to you.
Yeah, even if the postcard has gone out, right? I'd say that's, unless it's the day of the election, or even if it's the day before, right? You know, they still might appreciate your help, right? Whether it's a sign hold or doing something else. So I don't think it's too late until the ballots are cast. It's not too late.
Absolutely. And another kind of event-like thing I would keep an eye out for, and obviously this year they'll look a little bit different than usual, but most candidates will have shortly after they've returned their papers, like a campaign kickoff party. You know, again, typically that's when people, you know, there's food and mingling, etc. So I imagine that's, you know, there'll be a lot of Zoom parties this year, but a lot of information about those, it'll be on social media. Oftentimes people will take out ads in the Dedham Times or announce those kinds of events that way. So if you're kind of looking to find candidates that you are interested in supporting with your vote or supporting with your time, looking out for those kinds of events is really great as well. And one last question that I'll go ahead and field, even though I know that Dan and Paul and probably so many other people could answer as well. Someone asked how old you have to be to run for town meeting. The requirement is that you are a registered voter, so you have to be 18. And other than that, you just have to meet the same criteria that Paul mentioned earlier. So if we have any, you know, high school seniors, young college students, I'm a civics teacher, so this is getting young people involved, and this is near and dear to my heart. So thank you for asking that question. And yeah, there's you know, not as many young people on town meeting, but I think more all the time. But you know, all again, kind of to what Margaret was saying, everybody who lives here has a right to have their voice heard, and everybody's looking for someone to represent them, including teenagers. So definitely don't hesitate. If you think you're too young, as long as you meet that criteria, you are not too young. Come join us. All right, so I think I'm checking all of my different devices. I don't think there are any more panelist questions. So we'll go ahead and pause there and thank Margaret and Kim and Heather for taking the time to join us and share their expertise. So thank you so much. And I believe I will turn it over to Jess. Are you facilitating the next round of introductions and such? All right, I will turn it over to Jessica. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for being here and kind of flexing with us as we figure out how to hold this, which is, as Molly said, one of our favorite events of the year, really one of my favorite nights of the year in Dedham, on Zoom. We've done really well in having only a few Zoom snafus, so I'll try to keep it that way, even though I'm only a Zoom level 3. So this is the time, you know, this is a little awkward on Zoom, but we're going to make it work. This is a time where usually what we're able to do at this event, if we were in person, is actually introduce, allow the different candidates to introduce themselves, and actually then at the end of the meeting break up and people can get their papers signed. And so obviously we can't do that now. One thing that WINDD wants to do in order to help facilitate the paper signing part of that, and this would also be, you could also use this to help facilitate finding volunteers, is that we do have a very active Facebook page. And so we'll periodically, I think, try to initiate some ways, asking people to say if they're running and in need of volunteers or in need of paper signing. But also people can post on our page and we'll amplify that. So if you're looking for times that you can meet someone, you know, you're going to go to Dedham Square and sit outside or sit outside of the public library at the picnic table and collect signatures to give people advance notice about that. So we'll be trying to, we'll keep people informed about that, but we are looking for creative ways to support all of the candidates. So what I'm going to do now is actually go through and introduce the candidates who have been, sorry, I'm getting messages as we do. Introduce some of the candidates who've let us know that they're here. If you haven't already let one of us know, please do reach out to someone other than me because I'll get distracted, and we'll make sure we get you on this list. And yes, Lori, as I go through, I'm just going to go the order that we have them listed, and you can unmute people. What we offer you is a chance to just quickly introduce yourself, say your name, the position that you're running for, and then a brief and with emphasis on the word brief, just quick sentence about why you're running, and know that we're going to provide many other opportunities for you to get your message out. So with that, I'm going to start. We have a very active race for school committee this year. So there are 3 open seats on school committee, and I'm going to start by introducing Victor Hebert to introduce himself. And everyone, please bear with us as we do this. And let me just, as we're getting unmuted, I'll let you know that after all these introductions, we're just going to wrap it up, and I'll explain some of the future WIND events that we have, WIND events, and I would say programs to help support the candidates and also voters who want to stay informed about the candidates.
I'm all set.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Victor Hebert, current school committee member by appointment in September. I'm a part of the budget subcommittee. I am a part of the communications committee subcommittee. Last year I was a part of the opening task force for schools as a parent observer and contributor in small groups, but not in a larger session, and for the DEA school district negotiations with teachers and the teachers union. I'm running to continue holding my seat. That was by appointment. I fully believe in every direction that's been laid out for the district. Starting years ago before my time, we've been in Dedham for nearly 6 years. Where we are now was laid out roughly 5 years ago, and I think it's finally coming to fruition, and we have to keep pushing. And then hopefully the things that we're laying out today for the next 5 years will come to fruition. More will be coming. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thanks, Victor. So next we're going to hear from Rebecca Gates.
Unmute. Hi. Alrighty. So I'm Rebecca Gates. I'm running for school committee. I am one of those ones who has been a lifetime resident here in Dedham, and I have a passion and a drive for kids. I'm a mom of 3 boys. 2 have gone through the system and 1 is in it now. But I love these kids, and I'm working towards finding ways to do things for them that are, to make an impact on their lives. I have been an advocate of people standing up in my own family, and now I'm putting action to the words that I've made for the past few years. So I'm really excited to, I've not yet held office for anything except for Cultural Council. I run a nonprofit theater company here in Dedham. And so I'm really excited to have my first campaign. Thank you.
Thanks, Becca. Next, we're going to hear from Dawn Sievers.
Hi, I'm Dawn Sievers. I am sort of a lifer in Dedham. I grew up here. I went through the Dedham Public Schools from first grade through high school. My father graduated from Dedham High School, and my daughter has gone from the ECEC through, she's now a freshman at Dedham High. I've only recently dipped my toe into the town politics by recently becoming a town meeting member for Precinct 4 when there was a vacancy available. But I've now, you know, just with the world the way it is right now, I think it's one thing if you see some things that you'd like to see changed, whether it's in your own community or in the greater world, it's one thing to talk about it, but you need to get involved and push that change forward. So I'm putting my hat in the ring to get involved for school committee.
Great. Thanks, Dawn.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Beth Flanagan Gleason.
Hi. Hi, I'm Beth Flanagan Gleason. I ran for school committee last year. Like Heather, I actually found it to be fun. I was surprised by that, by how much fun it was, and I loved getting to meet a lot of new people. I was very proud of my turnout. I did well in pretty much every precinct, and I just loved getting to meet people, and I really appreciate all of the great feedback and all of the support. I have 3 girls in the Dedham Public Schools. My oldest girl, Margot, had been in the STAR program in Green Lodge. Margot has autism. That's a very central theme to me. I'm also from a family of teachers and school administrators, and I strongly support teachers, paraprofessionals, Jeannie Johnson, who had been running, you know, our food services. These are the people that make the schools great. I pulled papers today. My friend Tim Dwyer, who is the president of the Dedham Educators Association, came with me, which was very nice of him. And he's endorsing me again, a personal endorsement. So I'm very proud of that. So thank you, all of you who voted for me last time, and I hope you'll come out for me again. And I hope we have a fun election season. Thanks.
Thanks, Beth. Next, we're going to hear from Lisa LaPrade.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Jess. And thanks to WINDD for holding this event every year. I think it's very important for the community and it's a great opportunity for people to come out and hear more about the process. So my name is Lisa LaPrade, and I'm seeking a re-election for a 3rd term on the Dedham School Committee. I'm very proud of the work the committee has done over the past 6 years. On both the budget and policy subcommittees, and represented the school committee on other organizations in town, such as Livable Dedham. Serving as chair this year of the committee. And I think it's important to have continuity on the board, especially when there are 3 seats up for grabs on the board. And that is why I'm running again. A little bit more about me. I'm a 3rd generation Dedham resident. My maiden name is Pachella. I grew up in Dedham, moved away for college, and then came back with my husband, Jason, who's from Vermont. And I have 2 kids currently in the school system. Started the ECEC, and starting this fall, we'll have them back together again as a 9th and 12th grade at Dedham High. Aside from my family life and school committee work, I'm a molecular biologist, scientist by training, and I'm currently a senior scientist project manager for a global health and materials science company. I'm really looking forward to the election season, and hopefully I'd like to just ask for one of your votes. That would be great, and I'm looking forward to getting out there and meeting more people and running for re-election. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Lisa. And so our last school committee candidate tonight is Kylan McCormick.
Hi folks, thanks so much for hosting this event. It's really great turnout and nice to be able to put some names to faces. My name is Kylan McCormick. Like Jess said, I am a mom in Dedham. I have 3 young children. My son's at Avery. I have another one at UCEC and a 2-year-old who will be there eventually. I'm an educator. I work in Boston Public Schools, and I have for about 15 years. My focus, I would say, for my career is on equity and inclusion work with students and making sure that you know, children are able to reach their fullest potential. So I'm really excited to meet you all and start this campaign.
Great, thanks, Kylan. Okay, so our next category is Parks and Recreation Commission. There are 2 seats that are open on the Parks and Recreation Commission. We just have one candidate so far who's here tonight, and that is Lisa Farnham. So Lisa, we'll pull you up.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
All right, thank you, Jess. So as everyone else said, thank you so much for doing this. My name is Lisa Farnham. I live in the Green Lodge area of Dedham, and I've actually lived in Dedham almost 30 years. And my kids have both gone to Green Lodge, Dedham Middle School, Dedham High School, and we now find ourselves as empty nesters. And that actually is part of why I'm interested in joining Parks and Rec at this time. I've been a soccer coach, a boys basketball coach. I've been part of the Dedham Soccer Board for about 8 years, and I've been 2 terms on as a town representative for Precinct 5. I think I love being involved. I like volunteering. I love this town. And I think there's some opportunities that have not been taken advantage of yet with Parks and Rec, and I want to do more. And so I would appreciate everyone's vote. And I'm in the process of just kicking off. I took papers out last week and I submitted them today. So I don't need any signatures, but having a campaign kickoff soon and more to follow. But thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. So the next office we're talking about is the Commissioner of Trust Funds. And we have Emily Reynolds here. I believe there's, Emily, you can correct me. Is there 1 seat open or 2 seats open?
There are 2. There are 2. So far, I'm the only one who has pulled papers, and knock on wood, so far I'm uncontested. So we'll see how that goes. But my name is Emily Reynolds. I am running for re-election for Commission of Trust Funds. So I've just completed my first term, and I'm currently serving as chair. My husband and I have been here in Dedham for 6 years, just about, and have almost 3 kids. The third one's due in a few months. My background in the nonprofit sector and dealing with data and finance really kind of drove me to run in the first place. And I would love an opportunity to continue serving in that role. Again, I'm unopposed, but would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And then the last candidate that we know of for townwide office who's here tonight is Cheryl Sullivan, who's running for the Board of Assessors.
Hi.
Hi. Go ahead, Cheryl.
Thanks for doing this. It's kind of strange for me doing this online because I'm not your typical online person. I'm really struggling through a lot of things that I have to do online. But anyway, I've been in the town of Dedham since 1973. And 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to be elected to the Board of Assessors. I have a background in finance and real estate, which also involves appraising. And the role of the Board of Assessors is not to set the tax rate, which everybody thinks we do, but we don't. Is basically to look at the budget that we're handed and give a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. I love, love, love being on this board. I really had to learn a lot. And the Board of Assessor basically works very hard to listen to everybody that calls in, asks us questions about, how come my rate's so high or the rate's so high or whatever. But I would certainly appreciate your vote again for another 3 years. And thank you.
Great. Thanks, Cheryl. So we have a handful of town meeting member candidates who are here with us. And I'm going to ask, I'll start to introduce you, but what I just would ask is if you could actually keep it very brief. So just to say your name, your precinct, and maybe 1 sentence, just because I have a few more announcements and I want to make sure that we can end on time. So let's start with Bethany Gauthier.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bethany. I am a resident of Precinct 1 and planning to run for town meeting. Excited to run. I think one of the things I've been inspired by a lot of folks on this call is using these offices as an opportunity to really get ideas from the community, heard by the local government, and then also to share what's happening in local government with the community. So I'd love to continue that tradition with a seat on town meeting.
Great. Thanks, Bethany. Next, we have Leah Kane from Precinct 2.
Hi, sorry. My name's Leah Kane. I live in Riverdale. I think that was a wonderful question to be asked earlier on, is why do we all say how long we've lived here? But I'll join in. I've lived here for 18 years. I have a child in high school and the middle school, and I feel like I have some time to give back to the community now. So I'll be running in Precinct 2 for town meeting.
Great. Thanks, Leah. Next, we're going to hear from Eric Meyer.
Hi, folks. My name is Eric Meyer Curley. I'm one of the lifelong residents. I'm running for town meeting in Precinct 3. I was involved with town meeting in Precinct 2, and when I moved from Riverdale to Oakdale, I figured I'd try to continue in. I like being able to contribute and it feels good from previous times. It felt good being part of town meeting. I'd like to continue.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Next, we're going to hear from David Gleason.
Hi, my name is David Gleason, and I'm a resident of Precinct 4. And town meeting is something that's been interesting to me since I moved to Dedham 6 years ago. This is a great town, and I've always been civic-minded, and I want to be part of what happens going forward.
Great. Thanks, David. Next, we're going to hear from Zainab Isfan.
Hi, I'm Zainab. I'm also running for town meeting in Precinct 4. I live in Oakdale. I've only lived here for about under 3 years, and I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, so I might be an unusual candidate in that regard. But that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in, anything really, including this town, is that this is where I'm raising my children. This is where they're going to be grow up. So when I am at a time when I say I've lived here for 20 years, I want them to have spent those 15, 20 years in the town that I've contributed something to, and that I can proudly say that. So I will be running in Precinct 4. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Katie Casey.
Oh, sorry. Hi everyone. I'm Katie Casey. I'm running for re-election for town meeting member for Precinct 5. I'm a nurse. I work at Brigham and Women's, and I have a husband and a mom of 3 kids, 2 of them now in college, and I still have a daughter in the high school. And I did get involved when my kids were little and met tons and lots of great people, and it has been fun to be a part of town government, and I look forward to continue to serve Precinct 5. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Next, we're going to hear from Micah Flynn.
Hi, everybody. I'm Micah Flynn. I'm running for, I was appointed last fall to a open position in Precinct 6, and so I'm running again to get a full term. Thank you.
Thanks, Micah. And then our last town meeting candidate is Jamie Drewinski.
Hi, I'm Jamie Drewinski. I'm running for town meeting in Precinct 7 in Green Lodge, and I'll just leave it at that because I know everyone's trying to get out of here.
All right, great. Thanks, Jamie. So thanks all of you for being here. Let me just give a couple of, there we go, a couple of just final announcements. So I really want to thank all of our speakers tonight. So Paul Munchback and Dan Driscoll have been a key part of this program for the past 6 years, and we're always so grateful. They are helpful in this program, and again, you've heard this, I'm not the first person to say this, but they're both tremendous resources. And so, they have great advice, are super helpful, and both just have a real genuine commitment in making sure that people get involved. So I would encourage you to reach out to them. I also want to thank our panelists, Margaret Adams, Kim Bevins, Heather Springer, and our moderator, Molly Uppenkamp. When you can have a civics teacher moderate a panel about local civics, I think Molly's never going to lose this job, unfortunately for her. So we're really grateful to all of you, and thanks for sharing all of your wisdom and experiences. We just wanted to leave you with some information to kind of help you know other resources that are ahead of you for the next couple months. And we will be sending out an email to everybody who registered. We'll include information about our future events, as well as the election calendar that Paul spoke of, and a handout that has a list of all of the elected boards in Dedham and how many seats are up this cycle, just in case you've been listening, you haven't decided to run, but you may still be on the fence. We'll try to make that interesting for you and useful. Wanted to let you know about a couple other events that we have. One is as a service to all of you who are running, we have a campaign workshop, and we've run that the last 2 years, and it's been very successful and popular. It's actually a great, just casual way, it'll be Zoom way, unfortunately, but a casual way to get together. You can meet the other candidates, and it's actually a nice way to kind of meet candidates who you are going to be running against, but we can be there in a collaborative way talking about how to campaign. So we have about it's about an hour, hour and a half, and we'll have one track. We'll have to figure out how we do it actually in terms of a town meeting track, but we'll go through a presentation. We've over the years gathered advice from any number of elected officials in town, including our state rep. So it's kind of filled with good nuggets, and we're happy to make that available. So that's going to be held on Monday, February 22nd at 7 p.m. on Zoom, and we'll let you know information about that as it gets closer. We're also going to be co-hosting, along with the Dedham Junior Women's Club, a candidate forum in March, and we don't have the date set on that. That will, unfortunately, be on Zoom, or fortunately, depending on whether how nervous you get standing on a stage. So we'll be publicizing that as it gets closer, but wanted to let you all know that there will be a forum, both for candidates to get their word out, and then for those of you who are engaged voters to learn about the candidates so you can make an educated decision on April 10th. Lastly, on the topic of educating voters, last year we tried an experiment of hosting candidate statements on the WINDD website, and it was very well received. We had most of the townwide candidates did submit statements, and I would say about half of the town meeting candidates did so. And so we do plan to do that again. And one of the things that we'll do in the follow-up email we send you is send you a link to a form so you can submit a statement if you are running. It's a great way, again, to get your name out there, and for the townwide candidates, we'll also publish a picture so people can kind of put your name and face together. So I think that's all of my announcements. Thanks all of you for taking time out of a Monday night. It's always exciting and energizing to see so many people who are interested in how Dedham works and ways that they can give back to the town, whether that's again, by being an active voter, by being a campaign volunteer, or by being a candidate. So we're grateful to all of you for your service and your interest. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else, or if we usually have networking time. If people wanted to, we could, stay late, we could open up and people could meet each other, but it's a little awkward in this kind of forum.
I'll just add something that was referenced earlier, which is there's a ton of data that shows on average women have to be asked to run for office 7 times. And so you can imagine me looking each of you in the eye right now and being one of the 7 people to ask you to consider running for office. I can guarantee, having met many of you and knowing the rest of you are attending this for the right reasons, that you have something to offer to our community. And it really does take many, many, many people standing up over a long period of time to move a community in a direction. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you virtually or at a distance at many campaign related festivities in the future.
Yep. Thank you, Sarah. And I see Lori's actually putting in the chat links so that if you know you're running, you can click on those links. The townwide forum is for candidates who are running for townwide office, and the town meeting forum is for those who are running for town meeting. But you can save those and write your statements and put that in. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone for being here, and to all the candidates, thank you for running.